This book is called The Witness of the Stars by E.W. Bullinger. And in this book, he says, this is a very interesting book, but I'm only going to have a few minutes to show you, so. Thus we see that the scriptures are not silent as to the great antiquity of the signs and constellations. If we turn to history and tradition, we are at once met with the fact that the 12 signs are the same, both as to the meaning of their names and as to their order in all the ancient nations of the world. Amazing. The Chinese, Chaldean, and Egyptian records go back to more than 2,000 years BC. Indeed, the zodiacs in the temples of Dendera and Esna in Egypt are doubtless copies of zodiacs still more ancient, which from internal evidence must be placed nearly 4,000 BC, when the summer solstice was in Leo. Another amazing one is the Mayans, and they had like a lot of books that were very accurate, and the Roman Catholics came over and just burned them all, made fires out of them. So Josephus hands down to us what he gives as the traditions of his own nation, corroborated by his reference to 8 ancient Gentile authorities whose works are lost. He says that they all assert that God gave the Antediluvians such long life that they might perfect those things which they had invented in astronomy. So 8 Gentile witnesses Josephus had that are now lost. Cassini commences his history of astronomy by saying, "It is impossible to doubt that astrology was invented from the beginning of the world. History, profane as well as sacred, testifies to this truth." Noat, a French astronomer, infers that the Egyptian astronomy must have arisen 5,400 BC. Ancient Persians and Arabian traditions ascribes its invention to Adam, Seth, and Enoch. Josephus asserts that it originated in the family of Seth, and he says that the children of Seth, and especially Adam, Seth, and Enoch, that their revelation might not be lost as to the 2 coming judgments of water and fire, made 2 pillars, one of brick, the other of stone, describing the whole of the predictions of the stars upon them, and in case the brick pillar should be destroyed by the flood, the stone would preserve the revelation. Book 1, chapters 1 through 3. This is what is doubtless meant in Genesis 6:4, and they said, "Go to," or 11:4, and they said, "Go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach into heaven." The words "may reach" are in italics. There is nothing in the verse which relates to the height of this tower. It merely says, Hebrew phrase, and his top with the heavens, that is, with the pictures and the stars, just as we find them in the ancient temples of Dendera and Esna in Egypt. This tower, with its planisphere and pictures of the signs and constellations, was to be erected like those temples were afterwards, in order to preserve the revelation, lest it would be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. This is corroborated by Lieutenant General Chesney, well known for his learned researches and excavations among the ruins of Babylon, who, after describing his various discoveries, says, about 5 miles southwest of Hilla, the most remarkable of all the ruins, the Burj Nimrud of the Arabs, rises to a height of 153 feet above the plain, from a base covering a square of 400 feet, or almost 4 acres. It was constructed of kiln-dried bricks in 7 stages to correspond with the planets to which they were dedicated. The lowermost black, the color of Saturn, the next orange for Jupiter, the third red for Mars, and so on. These stages were surmounted by a lofty tower, on the summit of which, we are told, were the signs of the zodiac and other astronomical figures, thus having, as it should have been translated, a representation of the heavens. He's saying in Genesis 11, that's what it should say, representation of the heavens, instead of a top which reached into heaven. That's not what it means. This biblical evidence carries us at once right back to the flood, or about 2,500 years BC. This tower or temple, or both, was also called the 7 spheres according to some, and the 7 lights according to others. It is thus clear that the popular idea of its height and purpose must be abandoned, and its astronomical reference to revelation must be admitted, The tower was an attempt to preserve and hand down the antediluvian tradition. Their sin was in keeping together instead of scattering themselves over the earth. Another important statement is made by Dr. Budge of the British Museum. He says, "It must never be forgotten that the Babylonians were a nation of stargazers, that they kept a body of men to do nothing else but report eclipses, appearances of the moon, sunspots, etc., etc." So that is an amazing piece of information if you just followed the things that I said. And here's a picture of like the layout that was around the temple and how their descriptions correspond to the scriptures, and Jacob's description in Genesis chapter 49, I believe it is, that has derived this right here of the layout, how the stars correspond to the 12 people, and we know that from when Joseph said that y'all's 12 rods bowed down to me, and they were he says it was a picture of the stars, and his mom and dad were the sun and moon. So very interesting book. I hope that y'all would get this one and take time to look at it, because it's really awesome. So The Witnesses of the Stars by E.W. Bullinger. Alright, talk to y'all later. Bye.